You're very welcome, Paddy Moloney, to the Irish Traditional Music Archive. It's a great honour to have you here. And
I'm delighted to be here. Yeah. And I think I was here at the beginning when John O'Donoghue opened it, for the opening. I think, yes, I was around at that time,
Yeah, exactly. I think it was 2006 we moved into this particular building in 73 Marion Square. And you were there, And when I think back on all your work over the years, you're here every day. You're on all the shelves, and some parts of your work between your work as an outstanding uilleann piper first and foremost. Your work with the Chieftains, your repertoire appears in so many books here. Your work with Claddagh Records, and even the collections the Chieftains drew on. I think back on the Bunting collection, going back to the 1796 or 97. They're still arguing over the publication dates of that, but the George Petrie collection. So you I think it's special for us to have you here because you are living proof of the worth of having collections and the body of the canon of Irish traditional music on its appeal as a contemporary art form that can be universal all around the world, and of course something for us to be proud of here as our legacy in Ireland.
Yeah.
But
and it's still going, and there's no stop on it at all.
Yeah.
We're still getting plenty of invitations to different countries and places. Like Japan now has become so successful for us.
Yeah.
We had some great concerts there, and invitations to go back, and they even formed a little group, the girls. They call themselves the Lady Chieftains.
Very good, yeah.
And they played with us, in Tokyo a couple of times. And so I've been trying to get to come to America sometime.
Yeah.
There's 5 of them: pipes, whistle, flute, harp, and bodhrán, fiddle.
Yeah.
Great stuff,
And if we think of your journey and learning traditional music in the 50s and the 40s and 50s and the journey Irish traditional music has undergone in that time. Can you talk to us a little bit about your very earliest experience in traditional music?
Right. Grandfather now played the flute, and which I didn't get my hands on. I thought I would have got it, but it's up in the Schlee Mountains somewhere.
Still there.
buried underneath a sod of turf or something. But the house dances, parties that used to take place, and so I grew up, listening to all of these songs and the music, and a lot of melodeon playing, for the dancing and that sort of stuff. But I learned quite a bit at that time, and my aunt, and she's my only aunt. She's still alive. She's in her 90s, but she said, "I have to buy you a set of uilleann pipes," because Leo Rowsome was the pipes quartet used to be on a Saturday or Sunday, and so they'd be listening to that, the old battery style radio, and be terrific, you know what I mean? The music that would take place, but there was that atmosphere all the time. And then when I came, to Dun, when I was living in Donnycarney, and there was 5 pipers around there. There was Leo Rowsome, the king of the pipers himself, Professor Leo, and his son Leon and Liam played the fiddle. But they were just up the road from me. And then Dan Dowd was there around the corner on Donnycarney Road. And then there was a Peter Flynn, who had the most incredible pipes. One of the chanters belonged to Patsy Toohey. And I was the only one allowed to play it because it had a crack in it, and he was afraid somebody would snap it off. But every Monday was a big session there, and the music would be great. but they sort of called me the Pied Piper because I used to play with all the children and get them all to march behind me around, you know. Yeah. And but there was that atmosphere, you know, and the singing and the ballads, and they were all on the go, you know, old songs and that sort of thing. Some of them I introduced there, like on the country album, and Roy Cooder sang the song my grandmother used to sing. It was called Little Maid from Malabar. And they sort of got around to calling it the coast of Malabar. Yeah. And but he loved that, you know, and so we performed that in concert many times. And so it was great, always some little story attached to a song or something, or somebody, you know. And dancing, of course, was the half sets were marvellous, you know.
In Donacarney or in
both places?
Wow,
down in the Schliebloom Mountains now in Sconce, they, you know, there wasn't room. It's only a small cottage, you know, 3-room cottage, but they take turns and coming in and out, you know, and doing half sets and things like that, you know.
Isn't that extraordinary, really, when you think of the history of the uilleann pipes, you know, for our listeners, some may be aware, but others may not, like that uilleann piping was in a very vulnerable state in the, you know, the 1950s.
That's
and
right.
see, there were very few people playing. There's probably more uilleann pipers in Donacarney, in your immediate parish, than there were in most, perhaps even some provinces in Ireland at the time, you know, that there's...
Well, the competitions used to bring them out of the woodwork, you know, and I remember playing, it was, I think, about 15 or 18 young pipers that Leo was teaching us in the School of Music, and Leo Rowsome, and but I remember anyway going in to compete under 16, you know. Yeah. And I managed to get the cup, you know. I had 2 days off school as a result. But I was only 14 or something at the time, you know.
I read a lovely anecdote, your memory you had of Leo and your first tin whistle, and you're on a bus home from town. Was it a Christmas Eve? Do you want to?
That's right. Coming home, my mother bought me this whistle for 1 shilling and 9pence in Bulgers of Talbot Street. And but I taught myself how to play the whistle, except I had my right hand on the top instead of on the bottom. So I had to change over when I went on to the pipes, you know. Leo said, "No, you have to change," you know. But I know, having won that competition, the roundhouse in the mansion house, the round room in the mansion house. But Leo put me up on his shoulder and carried me down the hall, you know. These are things you sort of remember. Yeah,
and big milestone, I'm sure, in your life as well, in reflection. And could you talk to us a little bit about Leo Rowsome and how important? I often try and think, if someone like Leo Rowsome wasn't around in the 20th century, that important link to keep between making pipes, teaching pipes, and performing on the radio, and having that national presence from the 20s all the way up.
Yeah, he was like, to me, he was the father of the uilleann pipes, you know. And you know, I'd be up in the house now and again, he'd make me a read, or and I'd be going in to see him in the School of Music in Chatham Street. And any time they had their concerts there, you know, it'd be partly classical and something else, but there was always a spot for a piper. And he said, "Moloney, up you go," you know. And so I remember, just to be grand, I'd play Carlin's Concerto. You know, that was the tune, you know, and which went down very well, you know.
What was the relationship between, say, the traditional musicians in the College of Music and the classical musicians? Like, you would have been very much in the minority, I presume, at the time there. Very much.
I probably drove them all mad. You know? The sound of these pipes, you know, they put their beautiful cellos and fiddles and things like that. But I got to know some of the students there, you know, their burdens and things like that, you know. But there was respect for the pipes, and Leo had his, you know, his couple of hours there every day. He'd give me a half an hour, you know. He'd write out a tune for 15 minutes, and then I'd play the tune I got the previous week, you know. But there's only for half an hour, the lesson, you know. But then there was the Pipers Club up on Thomas Street, and I'd get the bus out to that, you know, out to Thomas Street, and be great sessions there. It was the beginning of Cultus, you know. And I remember we the first Fla in the 1950, 51 or whatever it was, and we got special suits, you know. And I was my first time to get into longers. We used to go long trousers. But that was in Mullingar, and it went from there, you know. It went just blossomed there from there.
Do you know, in terms of Leo's teaching style, was it dependent on, like, was it a very literary approach, as in writing out tunes, or was there a theory class, a separate theory class in the College of Music, or what way did it? Way did he teach? Like in
one for one, you know, and he'd write out maybe 2 tunes, which I still have, the old manuscripts, you know. And I'd learn those tunes, you know what I mean, and play them for him when I'd get my lesson going, you know. But
like, did you learn to read music in? I know there was in Marino was a great school as well in terms of music education as well. But where did you learn those skills?
You know, I sort of taught myself it more or less, you know, and I never became very proficient, you know what I mean, or got my various examinations. I didn't go to Trinity and I didn't go to UCD, you know, but it was all by ear mostly, you know what I mean, and that's how I sort of learned most of the music, you know, and did my own interpretations of the tunes, played my own interpretations of tunes and things like that.
Who were the pipers that impressed you? I know the likes of Tommy Wreck and Seamus Ennis and Willie Clancy and different pipers that would have been in that, playing around that time, you know. Were there particular aspects of each of those pipers that you borrowed from, or thought that's a good idea, or I like that, or don't like that? Was there any little ingredients that add up to the recipe that makes your voice so distinctive? Like, I mean, you're very recognisable instantly when you play from a very young age.
You know, I had great respect for all of the piper. Tommy Wreck now was great. He that flat set he used to play, you know, and he did incredible things. But then there was Leo, you know, who was marvellous. I mean, I was listening to more recently there to some recordings of him down in Loughrea, 1954, I think it was, and Seamus came out to the house once or twice, and he was very anxious for me to get on to a flat set, you know. And I never sort of progressed or this, you know. I just got carried away with what was going on around me, you know, concerts and different things. But there was Willie Clancy was actually going to Leo the same time as I was. He was getting lessons from Leo, probably improving his style and that sort of stuff, you know. But anyway, these were the pipers that I thought were marvellous. And I tell you who was a great piper too was Seamus Ennis's father.
Oh, right,
James
Ennis, it was the Fingal trio and
that's right,
Wow.
Oh, you're great. I was out in their house one time, you know what I mean. But the father, you know, once he gave the pipes to Seamus, he said, "I don't want them back. You know, I couldn't. I'd have to readjust them all, you know." And he never did.
How did his playing differ to Seamus's? Could you describe James Ennis's playing?
There was more close style of piping, you know, and but beautifully played tunes, you know.
Yeah.
I thought it was a
Yeah.
great style, you know, totally different than Seamus now, you know, who was great, of course.
Yeah.
You know.
Was there much about? Did you hear John Potts play by any chance? I'm curious because we don't have recordings of some of these people.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I never heard John play, but his son, that'd be Sean's uncle,
yeah.
who played the saxophone.
Oh yeah.
He was a great
Eddie.
piper.
Eddie
Potts,
yeah.
And he was a great piper.
Yeah.
You know, and he had a lovely style that was, I think, to do it with John Potts, you know.
Yeah. You had music in school as well, greatly encouraged, I think, was it, with the Christian Brothers? And
that's right, yeah. I had a Christian brother there, Brother McCaffrey, Seamus McCaffrey, and he encouraged me so much and gave me tonic solfa, got me to write it out on the board and conduct the band. There was a band there, you know, and 1951 or something.
Yeah.
And the Skullwira band, you know.
Yeah.
And so I often conducted that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's good preparation for
exactly,
the career ahead.
It was good old days.
There were some other some other great musicians around the area as well. Like in that school as well was John Sheehan and Leon Rowsome and Kieran O'Reilly and Owen O'Reilly and
Brother Forrestal was another fiddle player.
Yeah.
Who who encouraged the formation of the band.
Yeah.
And but around that there was John Sheehan lived across the road, and he was in my class. In fact, John was. Yeah. And it was Sean Bracken was a fiddle player from Marino there, which eventually led to the formation of the Lochgowna Cayley band. Yeah. And that was great altogether, you know. Yeah. Paddy Moloney was a flute player.
Lovely, yeah.
And Eamon the bootlayer. Yeah. Eamon the bootlays used to call him. Yeah. But
did Tony McMahon join that as well?
That's right. Yeah, but he wasn't happy there at all. He just wasn't happy. There was too much piano or something going on in the background. And
you were instrumental, was it the Shannon side as well, and the Lochgowna? They were.
The Lochgowna was the main sort of. We did. There's some recordings in RTE of the Lochgowna.
Yeah, we have a few here as well.
And then there was another band that it was like a Cayley band for, for old time waltzes and marches and things like that. You know. Yeah. There was the Shannon side Cayley band. Yeah. And Michael Tubridy was in that band. Yeah. For a while. Yeah. But it didn't last very long, you know. Yeah.
Have we recorded any of that, the Lochgowna? It might be nice to have a listen to that for memory's sake. Yeah.
Eamon the bootlayer and recording.
And then, what were some of the other, like there was a competition scene as well at some stages along there. I know you turned your back on at some stage on competition when you felt some of these are teachers and people, certainly not pipers, that would understand the nuances or intricacies of what you're doing. But were there, you had some duets as well with?
We had, the duets for the Oireachtas competition, and Tony McMahon and myself, and we got our £6. £6 each is what it was. And then another time was Bernie McKenna, and Rita, my wife, was out, came to it, you know, and I've said, listen, you keep an eye on Barney now, you know, in case I want to have a good performance here. And we won, you know, we won that one as well. And then there was a piano player, Anne Walsh, and she lived across the road, and she played in the Shannon side as well. But she played a couple of times with Sean Reid down in Ennis, you know, with the Tulla and that sort of thing. But we did a duet together, piano and pipes, you know, which was quite unusual, playing the melody on the piano, you know. And
that was recorded for RTE, was it, by Kieran McNahoon? That was very popular as well. It ran for consecutive weeks and months.
That's right, yeah. It ran for weeks. People requested it, you know. Then I was the anyway, that was the jig we played, you know.
Around that time as well, you were meeting up with, you're making connections with the likes of Michael Tuberty, Paddy Baugh, and you mentioned Eamon, the bootler. What was that atmosphere like in Dublin while you were also working a day job and doing, always living two lives, I imagine, in kind of parallel?
It was very funny with Eamon. He used to have a muffin spare, you know. It was a programme every Thursday from 5 to 5:15, you know. And I worked down in Baxendales, you know, down the street in Cable Street, and but I wouldn't have any, you know what I mean. He'd just bring me up, or he'd just bring up the script, you know, and as he read, I played to it, you know, improvised, you know what I mean, without any sort of idea. And then I put my pipes back in the box and run back to clock out. So I used to take that 15 minutes off, you know.
Packing it in. When John O'Reilly came to prominence, I'm sure with the likes of Misha Era and what was the early influence of Sean O'Reilly there, or your early experiences with him? Do you remember your first time coming across him? And
indeed, actually, Eamon had him sort of out shooting and that sort of thing. He was interested in
the fly fishing too.
And fly fishing, But so he worked in Healy's. And so Sean would go in there, but he introduced me to him, you know, and Sean had listened to me playing, you know, and was very interested in the pipes. And he said, could we meet up, you know? So I met him in the Trinity Bar, because he used to play in the Trinity, in the theatre. And so we used to have chats, and he'd be going over, now, you know, you could be doing this and you could be doing that, and you write out a tune and I'll write out the counterpart for it and that sort of thing. So there was that sort of thing going on all the time. And that was before Culture Uilleann. And then eventually he said he was going to. I had listened to Misha Era. I was very impressed by you know, his arrangement of the airs in Misha Era, you know, and the score was great, you know. So that's really turned me on to Sean then, you know.
With Culture Uilleann then, how did that influence you? Or what did you take away from those?
Well, there was certain things that would have sort of rubbed off on me, you know what I mean? But I never used any music. It was all our own stuff that I had worked on, you know. But at the same time, there had to be an influence there from some of the, you know, the ideas and things. I mean, I never went along and did tunes like arrangements that Sean would have done, you know, because first of all, we didn't have a singer, we didn't have a dancer, we didn't have an accordion. There was no accordion in the band. It was, you know, I wanted to keep it as pure as possible, you know, flute, whistle, pipes, and bodhrán, you know, and fiddles. And that was sort of the beginning of the Chieftains. You know? And I stuck to that for some time, you know. And we came up with the first Chieftains album, which I still have noted You know what I mean? I used the old system, tonic sulfur, you know, the do re mi system, and I wrote out the whole arrangements of the tunes in tonic sulfur.
So those skills you acquired in
school.
School where stood you,
yeah,
amazing.
And like I remember, for instance, an inspector came in, and you know, to listen to see what we were doing, you know, singing wise and that, and Brother McCaffrey said, "Moloney, come up here. Would you sing a little bit of tonic sulfur for this man?"
Yeah.
So I had mi do so mi so do re mi do ti do so re mi fas mi so re do di la so, and so on. And I sang the whole, you know, the whole tune.
Yeah.
In tonic sulfur.
Yeah.
So full marks, Ron, thank you.
yeah.
I mean, it just worked, you know.
Yeah. I mean, certainly when I listened to you playing that, both on your own piping, but also particularly with the Chieftains, but also with say recording with Sean Potts and yourself, you know, that harmonic awareness is something that
that's right, yeah.
I would guess, you know, some musicians are quite the melody linear focused, but I get the sense that your mind is going this way with a melody, but also going this way with a harmony. And
we're both in the same world, but you know, coming out with something totally different. You know, like for instance, the beginning of Tin Whistles, you know, that Julie Delaney, for instance. You know, Julie Delaney now started off dum. He'd answer me. It's just question and answer. And it was going on like that, you know what I mean? And then eventually we'd hit the tune. So that's very important, and still is very important to me, you know. I exercise that sort of thing on and off, you know. And
do you think is there a ground basis of how the harmonic development came about? Like, do you associate that with the tonic sulfur, or is it an innate, natural thing that's just built up, or
it's just in my head, you know? And what I usually with me, sorry,
no problem.
I'm inclined to see the tune. If I compose a piece, you know, for instance, there's in Sour, Chuck Egan Sour, there's compositions there. So for me don't rain me do dee da dee so for me, you know, and then it'd be a counter melody coming up then from the harp, then a counter melody from the fiddles against the same piece, and just bunch it all together and create that image, you know what I mean? Which I was trying to do is that what impressed me was I was in Lahinch with Michael Tubridy, and we did a week's tour on bicycles, and the tour, the Clare, it was called.
It's the late 50s type of time,
it was or early 60s, 60s.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of a piece to do with the crashing wave coming down on the beach there, you know. You know, so the bowron came in handy there. And but that evening, you know what I mean, there was a big storm, and there was a quietness before the storm, you know, and I could sense this, you know what I mean? And then I came up with Sea Image, you know, the piece Sea Image. And that sort of sprung from just listening and watching what was going on around me, you know. This is a great country for that, you know. But
go back to your relationship with Gareth.
Gareth,
and Gareth de Bruyne, and then working for Claddagh Records, and that coming together of you and Gareth, you know, just it led to extraordinary things, you know, the Claddagh Records, to some extent the Chieftains, and
that's it, you know?
And that broader meeting of the broader arts,
getting an Oscar for Barry Lyndon, you know, that kind of thing. The music, Stanley Kubrick was over the moon, you know, with And I remember I was in Claddagh at the time, and I get this phone call.
Yeah.
And this is Stanley Kubrick, you know, I'm doing a film, Barry Lyndon, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, oh yeah, okay, Mr. I hadn't heard tell of him, you know. I didn't know who he was, you know. And it was a Friday afternoon, and I was actually conducting, doing a press conference at the time. And I get this phone call, you know.
Yeah.
I said, can you come back to me on Monday? You know, this is a huge film, you know.
Yeah.
And I eventually, the following day, I was in London, and I went to visit him there, and he listened, you know what I mean, and he said, yeah, that's great, we have that piece of music now, if you don't mind, yeah, that's great. Now I have another song here, you know what I mean, and I played him this tune, you know,
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was, and he says, God, for God's sake, that's like it's like an Irishman on a Saturday night slobbering over a pint of Guinness.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. You know?
Yeah.
But I ended up eventually selling him 25 minutes music.
I'll go out. Yeah.
Including one that's on the Sean Potts.
Yeah.
Portnabuki.
Oh yeah.
Where I do just alternating chords. Dum, 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 dum. Dum, 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 all the way through the whole piece, you know.
Yeah.
There's no alteration, no
Yeah.
harmonies, just improvisation.
Yeah.
And using those two chords, you know.
Yeah.
Just alternating chords.
Yeah. Where did you source Portnabuki from?
Sean O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Sean played it. He also, I think he played it on the last album as well, his last album, which I actually produced, believe it or not. You know, it doesn't give me the credit, but no matter. You know, it took me 3 or 4 months to edit it, you know, getting a clink and a clunk from here, and putting it in there, you know, with 1/4-inch tape, the small tape, you know, and just with a razor blade and just binding it that way, and then looking for the note somewhere else. You know, there might be some part of the tune that would be a bad note.
Yeah.
So you go through the whole tape, you know, looking for that note to see where it match.
Yeah.
And make sure it matches. You know what I mean?
It's very hands-on work as well. And,
it was,
and you were managing director of Claddagh as well at this time.
At this time,
But you were very hands-on as you know, in the studio, publication, marketing, everything. What was that like? You know.
Right from the word go, you know what I mean? Like when Gareth asked me to become managing director, you know, I gave up the day job. You know, 1968. Goodness gracious, wasn't I lucky? And I worked up in Woodtown Manor, where Gareth lived, until I sought out an office. I said, we've got to get an office, you know.
Yeah.
And so then we went to Dame House, Dame Street. And I set up shop there. Yeah. And but I was doing all of that. You know, I used to bring the parcels around to the post office, you know, on a trolley. You know, I remember going to America in '69. And sort of, you know, visiting all those Irish shops and all those stores and different places. And I sold a fortune of albums, you know. Yeah. And so I had to come back and prepare them and send them out then, you know. And it was the time that the first man on the moon.
Oh
And what's his name?
Neil Armstrong. Is it?
Neil Armstrong.
I was going to say Louis Armstrong, but my head's
I think of music, but Neil Armstrong, and I was very impressed by this, you know, and very anxious. You know, an awful brat. And I said, I've got to be the first musician to play on the moon. And I did an article for the New York Times. Something that was happening, a concert was coming up, you know. And I said, I want to be the first, you know. Then I got to know the controller down in Houston. And my son, you know, became, interested in aviation. You know, he's a member of World Aviation, in fact, now.
Yeah.
But he was going to become an astronaut, and he did his floating around and did all that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, but he took up a day job as well.
Yeah.
At the same, but I met up with the controller, George Abbey.
Yeah.
He's become a great friend. You know, he's at every concert we do.
Yeah.
And he even got me to play for the launch of Discovery.
Yeah.
Out in Miami, Miami, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I actually played America the Beautiful, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which I can remember now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw that in amongst the good Irish reels and things.
That's great. Well, speaking from something from outer space as well, the music of Tommy Potts as well. You were there in the studio, I believe, was it, to record and involved in some of the producing of the Liffey Banks.
That's right. I brought. Tommy was very a nervous man, you know, highly nervous now, you know what I mean? And so I managed to persuade him, I was running Claddagh at the time, to get him down to Lugalaw, where they had set up a machine, you know, and but Tommy was, you know what I mean, he was talking, you know, and I knew he was only half with it. Yeah. And I said, well, we'd stop here, you know. I was stopping at Mrs. Levy's, Mount Farnham, and places like that, you know. And down to around the Round Inn eventually, you know, and a couple of scoops of coffee. And anyway, that got around. And when I got him up to the studio, and it was a good form, but in the middle of a tune, he might just stop. Bang, you know, and we'll have to start. Tommy, what you do that for, you know? I wanted to tell you the story about this, you know. God love him, he was a wonderful person. But we, you know, I managed to be able to edit and put it all together. Yeah, yeah. And in fact, went later, about a year later, went about doing a second one with Tommy, you know. But he just wasn't up to it, you know. Yeah. Just wasn't happy.
Yeah. Did he go into the studio or just?
Brought him into the studio. Yeah. 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 But anyway, that was a good old time going down to Lugalaw, you know, and doing this. You know? Gareth was down there actually at the time.
Was he? Yeah.
Yeah. But he wasn't involved in the recording.
Yeah. Is it any wonder? I think when you started in Claddagh, there was 3 published works, and by the time you finished shortly after, there was 45. I think so.
But that's right. I mean, Dolly McMahon was the second album, you know, which came just before Claddagh. But I used Dennis Murphy and Michael Tubridy on that recording, I hope. Yeah. But I know during that time I was trying to get I had a board in the studio, and I was hoping to get dancing on the board, like Paddy Moloney and people, you know, to rap it out, you know. And there was only one microphone, and one microphone. but it just didn't come across, unfortunately. And Morgan O'Sullivan, incidentally, who's like quite famous with his films out in Bray and all that kind of stuff, or was, or is, I don't know. But Morgan was involved, he was the engineer on that as well, you know. But I thought it would have, that was Dolly, you know what I mean? I think it was the first time that a female singer with instruments did, you know, an album. Like there was no bazookas or guitars or anything like that, you know what I mean? It's just traditional instruments. And I think that was the first one that happened in that. Like there was Margaret Barry with banjo and that sort of thing, you know. It was great. Who I have another great story about that. Go on forever.
Go on, Don't leave us hanging out.
Gorman was the fiddle player, you know.
Oh yeah, Michael Gorman,
Michael, and bringing them down to Lugalaw. And oh God, that was a mad night. We're all sent home, I think. We're going to call the police. But great music, though, you know. And,
was Martin Burns
Martin was there.
He was at the gatehouse, was he?
Yeah, that's right. Martin crying out loud. You started me on another story. I remember I had a little cottage down there that I used to rent from Gareth, you know, the whole family. We'd go down for a couple of weeks.
Lovely.
But I remember there was, around the cottage, there was hens. And, and there was nettles. and Martin would come across with the poor old hens. I have to cut the nettles down to scorch the arse off of them. Oh God, he'd have you in fits. And he called Rita the rate. She used to give him tea and scones, you know.
It must have been extraordinary times. It wasn't like to have someone from Garrock's background and his artistic temperament and an appreciation of the arts. Must, you know, I only met him once and twice, but one good occasion. And he was just extraordinary company, I thought. You know.
Great stories and knowledgeable person. I mean, his library is one of the biggest in Ireland, you know, it's unbelievable. His library of original books and things. And he knows every word of them, you know. Where did he get to learn all that, you know? Can I ask you about Paddy Moloney as well as a as a dancer and a flute player? Paddy was just amazing. But like our experience down in Spiddle was just extraordinary, and we used to go to a pub there in the evening, and I wasn't drinking any alcohol or anything, that was just playing music. And my wife and I, but we'd end up in a pub called Tim Johnny's, whom we christened, incidentally. And he looked like Alistair Tim, you know, the actor. So we christened him Johnny. You know, and the music would be flying there now, you know, with Festy there, and Paddy be up dancing, he was like the Fire of Tea, you know. And I had great admiration for Paddy, you know.
When you were setting up with the Chieftains then, you know, so what was what were the big milestone events?
It was getting people off work, and you know what I mean, to be able to go and, like, I had management. I went to Midem in south of France, in Cannes, and met up with various companies there, and I even used to. There was an Irish stand which I used to play at every day, and everybody says the tea party's happening, you know. I'd be up playing the pipes, you know. Just on my own, it's just myself. But I met up with a manager there, and Joe Lustig, and like he was he was saying, I'll get to the Albert Hall in 3 weeks' time for St. Patrick's Day, you know. Holy fruitcake. Yeah. So we ended up in the Albert Hall, sold out, you know.
Yeah.
And it just took that 3 or 4 weeks to do it, you know.
Yeah.
But then he started to get greedy, and so I decided, thank you very much, happy Christmas, love to mother.
Yeah.
So I started to move on and do it all myself.
Yeah.
Which I did, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, and along that year came Stanley Kubrick we got a Time magazine, page in Time magazine.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were you still working with Claddagh at this point as well, while managing
was,
the
yeah,
results?
it was a transition.
Did you have time to sleep at all? I pictured, yeah, action packed.
Yeah, and being away from home, God, I was the killer, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but very tolerant wife I have, you know. Yeah. She's still with me, believe it or not.
Yeah. Amazing, yeah. But, and I've heard Michael Tubridy and others speak to us here about that night in the Albert Hall, that to Michael. And I remember Sean Potts saying this as well, that it was kind of, when they went out, it was,
shock,
there was this, when they play, you know, the music would carry this huge big hall, the sound, and the realisation and the goosebumps that, oh my God, we're here, we've arrived, you know, that beyond the, you know, it was...
I remember coming back down the ramp with Sean, you know, and we were both in tears.
Sean Keane or Sean Potts?
Sean Potts.
Yeah.
We were both in tears, you know.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, then we went back up again, just like Manchester United starting up again, you know.
Yeah.
It was great, but, you know, and then to go back there 5 years ago to celebrate the 50 years.
Yeah.
Or the 50 years, yeah.
Yeah.
To go back and to sell out the Albert Hall again, you know, because you have people walk on from the hall, you know.
Yeah.
You can just onto the stage, you know what I mean? It's just magic, you know.
Yeah. And in terms of like your drive and belief in the music that it could deliver, was there ever any doubts in your mind, or you know, given you were the leader and the manager and the director, and had this vision for the Chieftains?
Yeah.
What was that like? Let's say going out, and was there ever any doubts in your mind, or could you show those even to the others, or what?
No, I mean, I'm an awful conniver.
Yeah.
But I had ways and means of getting around things, and as Matt Malloy used to put it, that's him, that's the mammy.
Yeah.
Don't know what he's up to, but we'll soon find out, you know.
Yeah.
But even to this day, there's still things that go on, you know. That.
Yeah.
But I'm always very careful that nobody's offended or everyone's comfortable and the music works, you know.
Yeah.
Like if it doesn't work, I won't take it, you know, I won't do it.
Yeah.
Just make sure it happens, you know.
Yeah.
And I've got some of the finest musicians in the world, you know, with me, and the likes of Sean Keane, you know, and I mean, who could ever, you know what I mean? He's just amazing, you know, lovely personality, and he'd blend in, you know what I mean? I'm sure you do as well yourself, but he'd blend in with things and be able to improvise and do things.
It's
so I always felt comfortable.
Musician,
And then, like, there's Matt. My heavens, you know, his flute playing is just incredible. And Kevin has just been there, you know, and he's never meant to be the singer in the band, as he'd tell you himself. Yeah. In 1976, I sat him down in Phoenix Park on the grass one summer after, and I said, listen, I need a bowron player because Paddy was leaving, you know. And so Kevin joined up with us, you know, and it just went from there after that, you know what I mean? Yeah. There was a great blend of music and that sort of stuff. Yeah,
and that moved from like...
There was something else I was going to say, sorry, yeah.
Well, maybe this might tie into it, like that move from and the transition from the Albert Hall and the jump to a professional outfit and leaving the day jobs, and then the likes of Sean Potts and Michael Tuberty when they returned to their regular job, and then
that's what I was going to mention. Incidentally, was to the problems of forming the band. Like it meant that we were going to have to travel. Yeah. And that meant time off from their jobs. Like Sean was a civil servant, Sean Potts, and Sean Keane was involved with the post office, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I went up to the my good friend Carol O'Dowley up in the forecourts, and he was the Chief Justice. Yeah. With his black cloak on, I can still, have a cup of tea, Yeah. He always came to our receptions. Yeah. Always, never missed them. Yeah. And I was telling him, listen, I'm going to embark on something here that might involve, persuading some of the band, with children with their pensions and all that kind of stuff. So if there's anything you can do, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because he was involved in foreign affairs at the time. So there was a connection, It wasn't as if, he was doing me a favor. Like, it had foreign affairs and it had that sort of thing. So he got sabbaticals for Sean Potts and Sean Keane. Yeah. And, they could go back to their job in 3 years' time.
Lovely, yeah.
And so it worked out. I mean, we were so lucky. So lucky,
Yeah, well, you made the luck in that case, isn't it? Like in terms of management and...
The management, that took a lot of... There was always moments of... like, for instance, I remember coming back from Austria or someplace, and it was just before Christmas Eve, and we had been touring. And then there was a kind of a little hiff going on between one or two of the band, which I won't go into. Yeah. So, so Sean was saying, I'm giving it up now after Christmas, that's it. Bang, So then Michael Tuberty, well, now that you mentioned it, Michael was smiling, Yeah. and then Kevin... he wasn't too happy about anything, Yeah. Now, we hadn't got Matt at the time, so I was going home, and I said, I get a postcard from Martin Fay, At first there were 6, now there's 3. Yeah. So I'm not getting that, joking, of course. Yeah. But anyway, we went home and I said, let me get the goose and the gander first, Yeah. And we sorted out after Christmas, Yeah. Or I'd sort it out after Christmas, so I had to sort it out after Christmas, And that's when I asked Matt to come on board and that sort of thing. So it started to snowball from there then,
Yeah. And other stages even before I got it when you mentioned Man United earlier. It's a bit like going into the transfer market and buying Lionel Messi or something, like bringing in Matt Molloy as a serious new addition. And Derek Bell as well must have brought an amazing added colour, to.
Old Ding Dong Bell, as we called him,
Yeah, his collections here, we're delighted to have in the traditional music archive here.
His early albums too, Yeah. It doesn't say it on it, but I did.
We'll have to put a note in the catalogue here. Yeah. But what was when did you encounter him first? What's your?
I always thought about a harp player, and the late Grania Yates was always very interested, and she appeared once or twice with us, playing the harp. But I wanted a solid harp player, chieftain, and that's when I was asked to do. a concert in Belfast, and they wanted Carolyn's concerto. So Ding Dong, he was the harp player with the orchestra up there. Alan Tongue was the conductor. And so that was 1972. 72 or 73. Anyway, we went up, and so Derek played 1 or 2 tunes with us, and I had him down playing in the National Boxing Stadium for a concert, a Fairport Convention were the leading group at the time. And so we went on afterwards, and it went down flying, So Derek played a couple of tunes, and then eventually, got him to do, everything in the Chieftains, So it went from there with Derek, And then he became a very close friend for many years, And we did try to do something for him, when he got sick. With the Mayo Clinic in Denver. And it worked out. It was working out fine, but then eventually it just didn't,
He struck me as exceedingly talented like that. I can imagine that bringing him into when you came to that stage of doing collaborations with other musicians from other countries or other backgrounds or traditions, that well, Derek, we have Derek to send out. That he won't be found wanting in any situation.
I'm playing in Frank Zappa's house, for instance. Recording a couple of tracks there, including one with Tom Jones. I can't stop, as I call it, I can't stop shoving you, I can't stop loving you. No, it's the Tennessee Waltz. Tennessee Waltz there. But Frank said, no, leave me out of this now, I want to, you know what I mean? He wasn't that well at the time. But then eventually he rambled in, and he said, too much left hand, get off the left hand.
Oh, God.
But he set up a whole thing there for the Chieftains, Rose situation, recording situation. And the sound was just magnificent, We did some of the tracks on Celtic harp. The bunting. We did some of the things there for him. In his studio.
And when you brought up Bunting as well, that those tunes, like when Edward Bunting, I think he was 18 or 19 when he was given the job of transcribing from harpers at the Belfast Festival or Society Festival in 1792 in Belfast, that those tunes he wrote, he put a generic description, some of them very ancient, in 1792. But to hear the Chieftains popularising those tunes again, what was the rehearsals like? Did you get out Bunting's manuscripts or the published books, or what were the rehearsals like? How did
just play them and bing, hope for the best.
Was it a kind of a?
I would do the arrangements. You know what I mean? And, if necessary to be harp, there'd be some harmonies here and there, but not over the top, But Derek always wrote things out because he wasn't an ear person so much. He'd write them out for himself, But we would just play them, you know what I mean? I'm just thinking of, for instance, the Carolyn tune,
beautiful. Yeah, lovely.
I mean, whatever comes into your head,
yeah.
you play it.
One thing I'd like to ask you about that, and I know we spoke off camera about this. Yeah. When you're playing either the on the chanter or the tin whistle, you've such highly ornate trills and beautiful grace notes, but there's also a sense of supreme kind of control. I compared it to you have the reins of the horse pulled in. You're in complete control, and you're almost like a bow and arrow releasing the note at the perfect second. Do you have you a conscious approach to that, or is there any advice you'd have to younger people for approaching those type of melodies?
Yeah, I mean, just to feel, first of all, to get it into your head. I'm playing that tune, Lord Inch Quinn, now for many years, and so it never comes out the same way. Like, for instance, the band, when we play Tour Them the Love or whatever, you know what I mean? It's never the same. There's always something, some little thing would come from somebody and a spark or massive fly off into a tantrum, or something like that, and that would inspire you to develop that, you know what I mean, and to go with it. But certainly not notes for notes down. There's notes. Like, the orchestras are fascinated by the fact, you know what I mean, when I do concerts. Most of us don't have scores or anything like that, you know what I mean. Like, Kevin is playing Boron, and he hasn't got a score. He has a note, when he's going to come down, but it's all in his head. I mean, it's all in our heads, you know what I mean, these tunes. And so the only person that might want to write down would have been Derry now, or maybe Trina at the moment,
Yeah.
But certainly there's total room for improvisation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know what I mean, it becomes dull, And I remember, incidentally, John Williams, when we did Far and Away, the music for Far and Away, and I've forgotten the tune. I mean, it's something like a. And so on. Right. But, that was all written out, and we were practicing on the road with massive scores, like 120 scores or something like that. And then it got to the recording of it, and to me it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And for John, he was the master, it wasn't working that well, Yeah. So I went to him, John, do you mind if I just take off and do my own thing?
Yeah.
He threw his arms around me, and he said to the orchestra, listen, you watch me, I'll watch him.
Yeah.
And that's, how it went,
Yeah.
So that's just a little example,
Yeah. What's your ideal preparation for going out on stage to play? What's the ideal?
Yeah, just a general concert.
Yeah, if you, and it's maybe partly advice for younger people or other performers. If you're going out to play at a Chieftains concert or something, what's the ideal preparation or setup for it?
Well, every time I do something different, for the tour. Like, for instance, this particular tour that we've just, our 60th tour, 60 years, or our farewell tour, or goodbye tour, they're calling it,
Yeah.
I put together a collage of photographs of people we recorded with, about 7 or 8 minutes, and I used the rolling wave, that piece of music, and it shows Dolly Parton coming up, and shows different people, Nelson Mandela, and that kind of stuff, and just shots of it, you know what I mean? And the people love that. It sort of connects, what you've been at for the last, 58 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's my recent thing.
Yeah.
But after that, walk on stage, you know.
Yeah.
And of course they hunt me out all the time, those bastards, you know. Jeez, they're terrible. You know, they put me out first, you know. Yeah. So I have to march on, so I'm on stage, and we all just sit down, and one by one they come on and get their applause, and which is always great, you know.
Yeah.
And then I usually start up a concert gently, not like O'Neill's March or something like that, you know what I mean? Usually with like in Uilleann or something like that, you know, a gentle piece, and it just develops, and then I get into lots of drops of brandy, you know, and it just gets going from there.
Yeah.
And then I feature the fiddle player, Tara Breen.
Oh yeah.
She gets out and does her little spot, because I kind of, putting together a program, I like to give a spot to each person.
Yeah.
But in a way that's not, you know what I mean, oh, here's so-and-so, bang, you know?
Yeah.
It's usually included or blended into something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think what I do after that. Oh yeah, and then we go out with a bang with a dance then, you know. So you're 20 minutes into the program already.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, as a continuous.
Yeah, and there's no stop or.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I don't do any interviews anymore.
Yeah.
No intervals anymore. You know. Just go for it, you know.
Yeah. And of course the Miss McLeod's as well is a great link piece as well.
End, you know what I mean? Yeah. Oh yeah, at the end we have, everybody does gets another little chance, you know, to demonstrate their skills and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
The Chieftains course will be 60 years on the road.
This is it. Well, they want us back, you know, to finish off those concerts. You know, we missed out on the icing on the cake, you know, when we didn't do Town Hall. Or Carnegie Town Hall, I think it was, and Symphony Hall Boston, you know, which I was looking forward to so much. Oh God, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's just like playing your own parlour back home, you know. Yeah,
I've been one time to a Chieftains concert in Boston, and the electricity went off at the Symphony Hall.
There that night?
And you had there was no electricity for miles around, blocks around. And, Paddy, you got a few calls. Carol O'Dowley moved. You had onto the mayor.
The mayor,
and there was generators arrived up to get the Chieftains concert was going. You couldn't get the tube there, but you could get you could go in it here. It's two generators or something like that. Yeah. And they continued it in the pub down the corner. Afterwards. Were you there for that? Oh yeah. But it was cool-headed. You got it sorted somehow. Would you mind if we listened to a track of you playing when you were?
Sure.
When you had the long trousers on, right? But it was the drone and from the drone and chanter. Maybe the trip to Duro, if we could pull it up. It'd be interesting to hear your.
Drones and the chanters, I'd love to hear, because I haven't listened to that tune for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's somebody mentioned it. He said, you know, that's a good version of that, you know. You should really play it more often, you know.
Yeah, we were listening to it this morning. It was dynamite. Yeah.
And it's County Laois as well.
Yeah, fitting enough for the
the connection.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Oh, yeah, fantastic.
Oh my God. This is what Sean is always after me to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Forget about, just get out into the wildness.
Yeah.
Little wildness.
That's great, yeah.
I remember I did that, I was probably well inspired by Seamus Ennis had already done his set at Bettystown, and this was the Pipers tune all many, many years ago. And I was next. I came up with this anyway. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was
fantastic. Beautiful crans and trills. And
things, yeah.
Who were the pipers? You know, can you detect echoes of other pipers or other influences there? What do you hear there within your own style?
Yeah. I've never listened, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never took up anybody else.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, who would be there? I mean, you would not know, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of Leo, of course, you know, who taught me pipes, but there's things that he wouldn't.
He wasn't doing. Yeah, there's super tight features there as well, isn't there? There's a back stitching.
But you wouldn't know now, to be honest.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
As somebody said to me, well, you have your own style now.
Yeah.
I remember Sean Potts saying to Mick Brophy, remember Mick Brophy, the piper?
Yeah.
And it was after the played at the Dublin Fesh, and Mick Brophy turned around. That fella was on this earth before.
Yeah.
When he heard a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
God, he great piper, you know.
Yeah. Do you know when a young musician is just in search of their own voice and creating their own sound, you know, so they're listening, they're taking input, and then, you know, like you're describing there, you've arrived with a distinctive sound.
Yeah.
Does it require a certain bravery, or almost on that journey you can get some detractors or jealousies, or you know, it's sometimes easier to copy to a point and stay there rather than go the extra couple of steps to have your own voice. And in any art form, I would think, you know, that did you were you conscious of that, or was it a tunnel vision to say, I'm going here? How did you deal with maybe negative voices or criticisms, or you know?
Never criticisms. No, just go for it. You know what I mean? And whatever happens, and just let it happen. You know.
Yeah.
If you have a good reed in your chanter.
Yeah.
Which is always a problem, you know. Yeah. And recently, it's very difficult to get good reeds now anymore. You know.
Yeah.
But I've been lucky, you know what I mean? And so I've had things happen there, you know, in the last tour, when you settle down after a few gigs, you sort of start to come into your own, you know?
Yeah.
And things start to come out, you know what I mean? You know, and you have musicians like Tim Eady, for instance.
Yeah.
Damn, how did you get that version? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd stand up with a microphone maybe and play something, you know.
Yeah. And
I always did it with Miolo Thuluan, God love him. One of the things, when we did a concert in the concert hall in Limerick, I said, okay, what are we doing tonight? We always did a tune together, you know.
Yeah.
I'd just play whistle or pipes or whatever, you know. And with Mihal, you know what I mean, who had a lovely style of accompaniment, and it was great, you know.
Yeah.
But I was telling you about Gareth and the tune Lugalaw, you know, I can still see the the sand coming up on the shore during the spreading of his ashes, you know.
Yeah.
And like it's through him that I got to know the tune Uilleann.
Beautiful, yeah.
Which maybe I'll finish up with.
Very, very appropriate, yeah. And this is collected by George Petrie, and it's up on the shelves here. And it was Petrie had that vision for an ark of this type as well. And Garrick and yourself, you know, shaped the serious.
Known one another for, you know, since he was 17.
Yeah.
We always disputed who's the eldest and the youngest. You know, I said, well, you're younger than I am, you know, and or older than I am. And anyway, it went on. There was an argument every time.
Yeah. Well,
but when I played this tune for him, you know, at his last feast, I was going to say, he used to have these tremendous lunches down in Uilleann, and. But over the last couple of years, I played this tune a couple of times for him, and it became very emotional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it sort of got to him. You know?
Yeah. Fantastic. No.
Anyway, Uilleann.
Beautiful, Paddy.